welcome back to the 6th episode of Gathering, a podcast by StartWell, where we kind of try to, explore what it means for people who support teams in this new hybrid reality of work. And I'm really, really, really excited for this episode because we've got a case study to talk about for return to office, which is a weird phrase, and we'll dissect it a bit. But I'm sitting with Cheli, Nolan from Relay. So thank you for joining me in the studio today.
Thanks for having me.
And I also, did I surmise that you traveled to get here?
A little bit, yeah. We're over. Yeah, it wasn't too far. I guess any kind of travel seems far nowadays, though.
Yeah, because there's traffic?
Well, there's the streetcar. The streetcar is traffic as far as I'm concerned.
Man, so much construction in Toronto.
Indeed.
Well, thank you for making the journey down here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Let's start by a little bit of kind of like background. Or you are the head of people at Relay.
I am.
And what does head of people mean?
Well, I think it means different things to different people. But in my purview, I oversee everything from talent operations and talent strategy to people operations, and then also HR as well.
That's a lot of hats. That's tons of hats that you wear.
It is. It's startup, though, so that comes with the territory.
So let's just do that. We'll come back to kind of what led you here, maybe, and let's just talk about. So, what is Relay?
So Relay basically is an online money management platform. So we target directly towards SMBs. We're sort of in a unique position. We're a proudly Canadian company, but we exist completely in the U.S. market. So it's a way it's a platform that's designed to help SMBs understand their cash flow so that they know how they spend, how they save, and mostly how they earn as well.
Super interesting. So you tie in your existing kind of like financial tools into the platform?
Yeah. I mean, I think in time we want to be like the all-in-one sort of financial control center, but I think most readily we're sort of in the category of being a challenger bank. Our goal is to get people onto the platform so that they have complete financial control over how they're spending their money, how they're saving their money, and how they're earning their money. For SMBs, this is particularly useful because this is sort of a space where big banks don't really tread. SMBs aren't considered particularly profitable. They're not, they don't really kind of service the needs of the smaller SMBs. So that's where something like Relay comes in, and it's a great opportunity for us to kind of service those needs and then really create potential and be a growth enabler, essentially, for SMBs.
No, I think we'll talk offline after this about digging in for StartWell as well, because we're always interested in like exploring new FinTech things that we can use as a company. And you're right. The big banks don't necessarily have tools or are not moving fast enough. They're doing a great job of innovating here in Canada, but at the same time, it's not framed. That innovation is typically not framed from the ground up.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of exciting. But being at a startup and managing people has its own difficulties, especially wearing all those hats.
Yeah.
How many people are part of the company?
So right now we're about 75 across full-time, part-time, contract, and interns. I think we're closer to about 65 as of today for full-time headcount. So we've grown immensely over the course of the pandemic.
So how old is the company?
The company's about 4 years old. So I've been there for about a year and a half. When I joined, there were probably about 13 full-time people in the company.
Okay, so you've had a hand in growing the team, 8X, 7X, 6X, whatever, by a huge scale.
Do the math later. Yeah, we'll do the math offline. I actually joined as head of talent and then was in that role for maybe a little under a year and then transitioned to a head of people role. So we've grown really, really quickly. I mean, the pandemic has been, a fortunate time for some companies to really continue to grow. So we started at 13, we grew to 38, then we grew to 55, and then we've been kind of steadily growing ever since. So
wow. So talent into people, I mean, obviously because there's greater responsibilities as you grow the team, so you had to step in. Talent was just about, initially, I guess the point is the team needed to grow, so how do you find those people? And was it mainly devs?
No, actually, we grew in other ways. I think we have a fairly large engineering team. I mean, we're about 20 people on the engineering team. I think we've grown in a lot of other ways, though. We're very, very customer centric. So we really needed to grow the customer experience team. So that's probably our second biggest team. Marketing has about like 10 people on it.
Wow.
Yeah, we have a risk team as well. So yeah, we've grown in all areas, really. So the interesting thing is that we didn't grow like through an engineering focus. We grew through like an entire company focus.
And so before this, a little bit of, now let's peel back the onion on your career. As a people person,
Yeah.
how did your career come to be and lead you to this interesting, point of like rapid scale in all directions?
Yeah, well, I've been in the startup space for a while now.
Okay.
So prior to this, I was at a company called Wattpad, which maybe you know. I was there for about 5 years.
It's like everyone in tech in Canada knows Wattpad, but they don't even know what it does.
You are not wrong. So explaining it to people is challenging. But I'd say it's kind of like one of the darlings of, the Canadian tech scene. It's been around for 15 years and, has had this success story of being acquired in the last 2 years. But I was there in the very early days. So I joined in 2016. There was Series B. There were under 100 people. And then by the time I left, it was over 300.
Wow.
So, yeah, so lots of growth.
3x.
Yeah. Got the math that time. Yeah. Yeah.
Man. Yeah, no, that must have been such a great experience.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, startups amazing. No 2 days are ever the same, right?
Right.
Whatever next is what I always say about startups. So it's great. So I've, had the fortune of being in the startup space. Prior to that, I worked in a recruitment agency and we always worked with like a lot of different startups. Wattpad was actually a client that I sort of like endeavored to make mine, and then moved into an internal role there. And yeah, have worked with startups, have been in the startup space for a while. And I mean, that's the great thing about Toronto.
So wait, why recruiting in the beginning?
Why recruiting? So I'd always had some sort of like aspect to like hiring people, pulling people together, getting people together to do things. In a previous life, I actually had my own business where I did like almost like an artistic management company. So kind of a type of recruiting. It's basically like managing creatives.
Sure.
And I worked in like marketing and advertising agencies for a short period of time. And I was actually living overseas and then I came back to Canada. I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
But I'd been away for a number of years.
Where was overseas for you?
A couple different stops. I've been in England for about 4 years. And then prior to that, I was in Asia and then I was just a world traveler as well.
Wow.
Just a bum. So, yeah. But I'm originally from Toronto. So I came back here and it was kind of like getting to know this city again, even though I knew where all the streets and where everything was, the city was completely changed. So I'd worked in marketing and advertising agencies and sort of I got on the roster of like a recruitment agency and then they just approached me about joining internally. It was with a division of Robert Half. It's called the Creative Group. So they really like to hire people who come from the creative industries so that they can sort of speak the language of their clients.
Sure.
So I went there. I was there for about 5 years and that's sort of like how I made my mark in recruitment. Recruited for everything from like film to illustration to packaging design, production design, loads of things like that. And then, so did that for 5 years and then transitioned to Wattpad. And then now I'm at Relay and have been there for about 1.5 years. So it's been, nearly a dozen years. So, yeah.
And so much has changed in terms of recruitment and talent acquisition.
Sure has.
The world is completely different, isn't it, compared to when you started?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're hiring for a talent lead right now and talking to them about the tools that they have at their disposal. And it's just, it's wild, right? Because when I was doing it, like when I started doing it, it was like a Rolodex.
Right.
Like everybody would
You
carry.
have to call somebody and be like, hey, do you have any people? Do you know anyone?
Well, exactly. Who do you know? That was the first thing that you always
And now
asked.
it's like, oh, hold the phone. Let me log into Facebook. Oh, wait, not Facebook. Let me log into Instagram. No, not Instagram. Let me log into, LinkedIn. Oh, I haven't updated my profile. I know thousands of people, but I don't really.
Yeah, exactly.
And so dead ends all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
And churn and attrition being a problem in the last few years has changed.
Layoffs.
Yeah.
Now the layoffs, it's a wild world we're living in. So
yeah, when we talk on this podcast, or we have so far talked to any technical recruiters, we had a chat with a technical recruiter named Sean recently. One of the stories was in hiring Canadian talent for essentially foreign entities. He deals mainly with American companies. It came out that like there's a huge appetite for Canadian talent
for sure
and hiring in Canada.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing. But at the same time, I mean, It always feels like we don't have enough talent in
Yeah.
the country.
Yeah.
I actually had a chat with someone just recently. There was an amalgam of privately owned hospitals in somewhere in the northwestern U.S. that called us up to use some space for a hiring junket.
Yeah.
They wanted to hire 9,000 nurses in the next 2 years. And I'm like, leave our nurses alone.
We already have enough of a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need more good people.
Yeah. Well, we don't pay them well enough,
Yeah,
though,
I know.
right?
It's a real problem across the board.
Yeah.
So what are some major differences that you see, in that role of talent acquisition now versus then when you started out in this job? I mean, one was so sourcing leads, sourcing people, finding people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the big things are like from a tactical standpoint, it's like nobody has to have a resume anymore. They just like have it on LinkedIn. They don't have to put the work, the graft into it. So there's that. I think, the salary stuff has just like completely changed.
People
as well.
earning tons of money.
Yeah, and asking for tons of money, right?
Right.
I mean, like speaking of like, developers and engineers, obviously they spend a lot of time at school. They spend a lot of money to learn at school, but, coming out, some of them are like asking for like six figures. And it's like, you
Like,
haven't...
how can I pay you that?
Yeah.
Help me pay you that. Help me pay you that. Okay?
Yeah.
We'll give you ESOP. We'll give you stocks. No, you don't want stocks? You want to buy a Ferrari? It's not going to work.
Yeah. Well, this is it. All the incentives that you have to give, right? So it's, that's changed. And even just, and there's upsides to that as well, right? Like I believe in people having a fair wage. I believe in people having like an equitable way to live, especially in a city that's this expensive. But, I think the biggest learning has been like the push for change, right? And the pandemic's been a big part of that too, right? So asking for more accommodations at home, asking for different hours, and that's at the heart of young people asking for that, and we wouldn't have changed, right? I think my generation and possibly yours, if you're the same vintage as me, but
probably. I guess. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I went to university in 1998.
Yeah, we're the same vintage.
That's a good one, right? I'm not going to give away my age, but if you've been to university, you know what that means.
In this range. Yeah.
Yeah, man, a lot has changed. I was part of the early internet in many ways. Like I got online in 95 and I used to connect, businesses and people and teach them what the internet was when I was a teenager in Kenya.
Yeah.
I was a Canadian teenager with a bag of modems.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely seen some things since then in that have been wonderful and also kind of like disheartening in terms of, how it, how I think the fluidity with which people now can access opportunity online, if they are technical workers especially, has kind of challenged the expectations of employers as well as the staff themselves, the employees themselves on what a career means.
Yeah.
And like, is a career that patchwork of, your LinkedIn saying that you worked 6 months from here to Sunday? Or is it something that says, hey, I built this thing and that thing had legs? Yeah. And it might have been 6 months that it took, or it might have been 6 years or 60 years. I don't know. But like, so where are you seeing from the talent that you're talking to in terms of a commitment? I guess two things. Are you for Relay hiring or looking abroad for local people to move here and to be here?
Not so much. For us, we've really focused on hiring in Canada. I think we've looked in other markets in Canada, like definitely looking outside Toronto. Like we've hired a couple of people in Halifax, Ottawa, like quite a few in Calgary and in Vancouver as well. But yeah, we haven't supported like visa processes and things like that only because the wait is just so long right now.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I did a lot of that at Wattpad, and we were like waiting 16 months for people to come sometimes, which, it's challenging because those people are sort of like in this like standstill kind of state.
Yeah, you don't want your people anticipating. Like it's something, I just reading very briefly that Mark Zuckerberg letter yesterday where he laid off all these people and he was like very cavalier about how difficult it is, he assumes, for the people on visas to like figure out how to get out of the country. Oh, we'll give you a few weeks, don't worry, and then you can get the hell out of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, these are difficult things, you know,
Yeah.
managing people's lifestyles as an
For sure.
employer.
For sure.
Or facilitating them, enabling them. So this is really interesting because I think it brings us to this return, you know, to office question. But like, let's say how you've got a cross Canada population,
Yep.
And it's growing.
Yep.
Toronto has the bulk of the people.
Yeah, I would say like the GTA. Yeah.
Okay, let's start by describing your office. What is the Relay office like?
Well, now it's great. When I first started, I describe it as a unremarkable suite at Yonge and Bloor that housed about 20 of us, usually not at any given time because it was quite tiny. But we sort of spread our wings a bit about a year ago. So we've been in this office space at 60 Adelaide East. So it's right at Adelaide and Church. It's kind of,
I used to live right around that corner.
it's a great area. It's a really great area. It's in like an older building that's been completely refurbished. So we've got an entire suite. We've got space for up to 100 people. So it's great.
On the northeast corner?
Northeast, yes, on the northeast corner.
So I used to live, so then you must go get coffee at Fahrenheit.
Yeah, well, there's a couple places now. There's
Okay.
one in the base of our building. It's called XOBZoo. Little plug, shameless plug here.
Oh, I
but
never heard of that
They're
one.
fantastic, really great, and great people there.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
good one.
Yeah, and Fahrenheit, Samir, who owns and runs it, went to the school I did in Kenya.
Oh, okay, wow.
So that's a little small world connection. I used to live
small.
right on like on Adelaide and Jarvis,
Okay.
facing the park.
Right. Okay, so very close. Yeah,
Nice neighborhood.
it is.
It's gone through a lot of changes.
Sure has.
So that's an interesting thing that, like, you know, the office has changed as it needs growing. Mm-hmm. You've got some extra capacity that's pre-built out. Mm-hmm. What does it look like inside, and like how has kind of the format changed?
When we first took it over, it looked like a murder site.
Oh no.
But they completely did a lot of construction. It looks great now.
Okay.
So it's, you know, very modern, sort of like the polished cement floors, you know, very modern colors. It's quite nice inside. Previously, like I worked in a heritage building that had a lot of critters and rats and lots of cockroaches and whatnot in it. So that had its own charm, but being in something kind of fresh, spanking new was like a breath of fresh air after the pandemic, for sure.
In terms of features of the office, is it just like desks and kind of, you know, rooms?
Yeah, well, I
Anything
mean,
cool?
well,
anything random?
I think it's cool, but what can I tell you that's cool? It's very, you know, it's got lots of glass doors in it, like lots of sort of like fishbowl kind of type offices. So
Okay.
it's like, and we've got like 360 windows all around, so we have amazing
wow.
views as well. So it's
really cool.
Yeah, it's quite nice. Yeah, it's good.
Okay, let's talk about what happens in the office.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like this whole question of kind of if you want to like engage, because also this is interesting. A lot of our audience may not be in Toronto and may not be in Canada, and specifically in Canada, you know, and a lot of people on the series so far have been talking about this. Is we have this unique kind of disadvantage in a way as organizers of people for business that return to work has become a thing. It's a phrase everyone knows and talks about. There's difficulties in promoting the idea of people coming in an office space and sharing that space with each other. And that's not necessarily the case in so much of the world.
Yeah.
So some of those aspects or the reasons for that in Toronto are what I've assumed is to be distributed workforce already. Like we already have had people that work in downtown Toronto from basically the suburbs and this whole like greater Toronto area, which is large.
Yeah.
So saving the commute seems like a great thing.
Yeah.
A liberator of time and resources. Mm-hmm. And so that alone enables people to kind of say, or has post-pandemic to say, well, I really like my life and I'm kind of doing my work, and can I have both? Mm-hmm. So where amidst that are you guys seeing a kind of a want for your people to be together in real life?
Yeah.
I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, so for us, I think it's more about the opportunity that's created when you get people in a room together, right? Like I think the learnings expand a lot quicker. You know, the personal relationships develop much faster. So for us, it's been more experiential than anything. I think one thing that we did is we posted it on the job descriptions that we're like a hybrid setting. We're in office, so that by doing that, you're getting people to opt in to that, right?
Yeah.
So you're automatically tapping into the people who want to return to work. I think it's not without its complications, though,
Sure.
right? What we did is we said we'd do Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 days a week. So it is truly hybrid because 60% of the time you're at home, right?
Yeah, if you want to be.
If you want to be,
Yeah.
yeah. But we did open up the office to other people. What we found was, especially after all the lockdowns, like last winter, we found that there were so many people who were just so bored of staring at four walls. I mean, this is Toronto. Lots of people live in 500 square feet, right? So there were a lot of people wanting to come in. So there were people coming in on like the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So, but then, there were others that I think once the lockdown had happened, it was like, I don't know if I want to go back. I don't know if I want to ride the TTC or the GO train, right?
Sure. All this like
Extra factors.
and new patterns of behavior,
Yeah.
right? Born
Yeah.
of the pandemic.
Yeah, new risks, right? New things to think about. So, but yeah, I mean, for us, I'd say that, there's been big learnings from doing it for sure. I think, we've had to kind of go the extra mile sometimes, like
What does that look like?
catered lunches,
Ooh.
snack and beverage program. In the summertime, we had like a summer series, like an entire like roster of events.
Whoa.
So popsicle stands, ice cream bars. We had like a meditation session. Like we did a ton of things. We tried everything, right? We played like shows at lunchtime on the big screen. Like we just did a host of things. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. I think some of them were just alien to people as well because nobody's had to do anything like that in 2.5 years. And those things, by virtue of doing them, they include socialization, which,
Right.
Is a lot sometimes for people right now. So,
But that's pretty wicked. I think the way I look at it is that if you're doing activities together and those activities aren't kind of performance based,
yeah,
then you kind of can drop the guard and like people can hang out together.
yeah, yeah,
And sure, some people do have stigma around, especially in 9 to 5 Toronto,
Yeah.
historically, around, well, my time is my time and work is work and I just want to come into the office and work. But then I think also this is prompting a reset with some of those people too, you
Yeah.
know, this post-pandemic thing of saying, well, I don't know, because if I'm at home and everything is everything,
yeah.
then I have to kind of live that way at the office too. So maybe there's opportunities to just socialize at the office.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's a lot of that. But I think that's, similar to how, MasterCard factors like, people absconding with money into their like business practice. You've got to sort of factor into like the day to day that people are just going to want to socialize. People are just going to want to hang out. But there's a value in that as well, right?
Yeah.
That's where the relationships deepen and the trust builds. And, then I think the next time, maybe that won't be the case. Maybe people are getting to something done a little bit faster or a little bit more effectively. So I think that's the risk you take. But there's an upside to that as well.
For your organization, are you feeling like this is a temporal learning curve, or will kind of like the weekly pattern stabilize in some way for your team?
I think we're there now. I think it's started to stabilize. Like we pull the numbers on, we do it based on meals ordered, which is
How much food are our people eating?
Yeah.
If they like the food, they'll come back.
Pretty much. It's anecdotal at best, but it does tell a bit of a story. But yeah, we've sort of stabilized. I think for us, one of the things we did is we asked for people to come back. Like we said, you have to come on a Tuesday and Thursday, and we had like a plan for commutable distances. And there were learnings from that as well. Like if that was, really what people wanted. And I think, the thing that people weren't saying was, am I still trusted if I work from home? Or if I'm a completely remote employee, am I still as valued as the people who are in the office, right? So those are the things you kind of have to deal with and get ahead of. And those are ongoing questions, right? Like as people join the organization, it's new for everyone. So, but...
Have you soundboarded some of this stuff or vocalized this with other folks in your space in different organizations?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, even talking to, people that I used to work with at their places of work, it's like, one of the managers at Wattpad, who's the office manager, told me that they're lucky if they get 11 people in. And I mean, that's a space that has like, room
Hundreds.
for like 165 people, right? So it's harder, right? And this is the thing, because it's, everybody's sort of self-congratulatory, like, we transitioned during the pandemic, we went home, and it's like, you sat on the couch and you turned your laptop on, like, this is nothing, no great feat.
Yeah.
But who knew that actually coming back to the office would be really hard to motivate people and galvanize them.
Honestly, it's interesting because I think like this is the great hope, social hope, is that fundamentally workplaces can evolve to enable people to do great things, not only great work, be comfortable more,
for sure,
and shed some bias. Like there's all this inherited bias from like Don Draper, from the 50s. Like there just is this a lot of this like subconscious bias in North America of like things have to be like this, and like Sunday heebie-jeebies about Monday. If you don't go in on Monday and Tuesday, do you have the heebie-jeebies about Wednesday?
Yeah.
Do you just have an aversion to work? Are you doing the right job in your life?
Well, Don Draper could go to the movies to think about things, so that sounds like a good plan. But
so I think it's there's a reckoning maybe locally. Yeah. And the reckoning is not so much like the big fear factor that's expressed in media, which is that, at least from the commercial real estate standpoint, that like, oh, we're in crisis because REITs are losing money. I don't care about that. What I care more about is that teams have a means or a justification for kind of getting together more.
Yeah.
Like, it should be great. You should enjoy the company of the people that you work with.
Yeah. You spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah, more than your spouse or whatever normally, more than at home.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, big learnings.
So where do you see, as you guys grow, because I'm sure this is a continuing trend, right? You'll double in the next year sort of thing. Where do you see the relevance of Toronto as now also that you're looking to bring on team members from across Canada?
Yeah, so I think the ultimate goal would be that we'd have different hubs in different cities, so that we'd look into, having something similar in Vancouver so that the Vancouver team can get together, so that they can have like in-office learning, so that they can build their own culture. Because that's the thing with growth, especially in startups, there's going to be a lot of like microcultures developing across different teams. So I think that would be the hope for us, that we start to have like hubs, and then if people from our team are going to those hubs, then they get to experience that too. So.
And it's an interesting point, but with this, when did you guys grow into the latest office? When did you take on that lease?
So October 5th last year. So we're just a year.
During the pandemic.
Yeah.
What was the process like to find that office? Were you exclusively looking for leases, or were you looking at, maybe some flexible solutions? Co-working solutions as well.
I think because we had the small place, that we knew we needed to grow really, really quickly. So we knew we needed something much bigger. And I think we really did want to do the, hanging the shingle out, brick and mortar. We did look for leases. Big learnings on that as well.
Yeah.
Right?
What did you learn?
How expensive real estate is per square footage in Toronto. But also just like really trying to find something that would be like a reasonable distance for people coming in from Union. If you are going to hire people from the GTA, it has to be like walking distance. So we did a lot of like pulse checks and surveys, like finding out what was important to people, like how long they were comfortable traveling. So we had to sort of do a cross factor of all that data and then weigh that against what kind of place we chose. So we were lucky to get the place that we did, and we're very happy in that place. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Real estate is crazy expensive, even with the discount. So in the CRE world right now, there's so much hubbub, in conversations that I'm privy to, where at least in our space, I mean, we're kind of doing different things with co-working. We're moving into an on-demand kind of vibe. We have anyway since 2019, but in that conventional, like, glass cubicle kind of office, WeWork, whatever model, it's interesting because like those co-working operators in many cases are up against sublets.
Right, of course.
And then terms on sublets have become super favorable in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
As landlords are now not quite freaking out, but saying, wow, it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
That these sublets are not, the people trying to sublet they really want out of their lease.
Yeah.
So we have to be more agreeable with who comes in on the sublet, and also how that sublet can get renewed.
For sure.
You know, and it was funny because I was just talking to someone a couple days ago about a 5,000 square foot fully furnished and serviced sublet that they found for $24 a square foot, all inclusive, $24. You know, which is like a third of what it should be.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Without the furniture.
Yeah.
Because usual is like what, $55 to $85,
Yeah.
depending on where you are.
Yeah.
So there are some very cheap deals out there, but then there's ambiguity about how those can get renewed,
Yeah.
and if you have to get out in a year or 2 years and all this stuff.
Well, we had to sublet the place that we left behind. So, and the furnishing was key because lots of places were like that because there was no furniture available, right? So people
because everyone got it for their houses.
Yeah. Well, or we're on a wait list.
Or supply chain issues from China, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you had to, so you guys were thinking of getting out of this lease. You realized after a couple showings that you needed to like leave everything there?
Yeah, well, we didn't want to take it with us because we had brokered a really great deal that we were going to get our new place furnished as part of the deal. So that was the kind of bargaining chips that were on the table, right? So we couldn't take it with us. But then once we started like listing for sublets, we found that loads of people wanted a furnished place. So and we only very recently parted ways with it, maybe only about 3 months ago. So, and we had to get rid of all the furniture and we gave it on to the startup community. So
nice.
Yeah.
Man,
full circle.
Cool. Yeah, right? Startup life.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very interesting. So with the extension of these hubs in different cities, the intention is to take on leases in those spaces as well?
I think
it depends on how growth for talent acquisition goes.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it depends on how we scale, but I think realistically we would be doing something like a WeWork or something similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the kind of, as you bring on people, what are they looking for? Are there trends that you kind of, and is that part of your onboarding discussion is like lifestyle wise, what are people looking for?
Yeah, I think lots of like pushing. I mean, the usual suspects that you sort of hit before, like the stock option programs, like the ESOP stuff, the benefits like from day one, like those are table stakes now, right? But I think, usually people are looking for, like, we get, the extreme request that it's like, I want like a hydraulic standing desk, I want a chair that can also move up and down. And it's like,
Whoa.
It's very specific, but, otherwise it's the usual stuff, just like the monitor and all the peripherals and that kind of stuff, which I think is reasonable, right?
Oh, totally. You want a workstation that can enable you to do work the way you're used to it.
Yeah, and impact productivity, right?
Yeah, capital P. That's interesting that the ESOP. But what about vesting periods? Like, because this is something I keep hearing is that people are looking for great upside no matter what, because with the latest tech firings, talent's less trustful of being able to park themselves. And at the same time, they might, even despite all the like Facebook firings and so on, not think that they would want to stay in the same place for too long. It's kind of like, and this is again what that technical recruiter was saying, is that a lot of devs particularly are like, when the problems aren't hard anymore to solve, then they want to move on to other hard problems.
Oh, for sure.
And that's where a lot of churn comes from in the engineer community.
Yeah. I mean, it's the asks are numerous, I would say. Like, I think on the stock options, like we usually use that as like an opportunity for education, because I think a lot of people truly don't understand like that could be the biggest payday of your life, right? And the longer you stay, the more you invest in that, right? So we've really gone through like an education sort of process like with our team members, and sort of making them owners in that journey has been really, really important. But yeah, I mean, the asks are considerable, like vacation. Vacation's a consistent one, and that's another one. That's another one that's really interesting. Like the unlimited vacation versus like actually having a designated amount of vacation. So that's a very controversial one if you want to pick into that one.
Yeah, I would like to, because as an employer, I've always taken it like, and I'm a different kind of employer in the sense maybe that we're a physical real estate business, so people have tangible things to do every day. So if they go on holiday, that things don't get done, and we're lean. But I've always taken it that like, look, if we could socialize what your needs are, then, and we can cover you, then of course, go on holiday and your pay won't be docked for the time that you're away. And I don't want to even deal with payroll. Like, I don't want to question how payroll works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go to Montreal.
Yeah.
This is a recent example for our producer in the booth. He went to Montreal last week. I was like, yeah, just go to Montreal. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
So I've always taken that kind of thing that, like, as long as nothing's being dropped,
Yeah.
you know, and it's also enabling people to like have fun adventure in life, then that's great. Mm-hmm. But it's now butting against this like remote work question.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a conversation with someone, I think it was yesterday, talking about, you know, how you audit. Yeah, it was yesterday. I know exactly what I was talking about. It wasn't on camera, but it was someone here on campus, and they were saying, as an employer, they don't necessarily trust that remote work yields efficacy and performance,
Right.
because they don't assess performance as clocking in.
Yeah.
You know, it's more like, give me your all, give me who you are, like show me some cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And people he's seeing are a little disenfranchised from the work that they're doing when they're not like surrounded by their peeps.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that comes back to what I was saying about, you know, people like being asked to return feeling like that trust is lost or that trust is broken, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's like a tough nut for people to swallow, because I think a lot of people have proved that through the pandemic you can work doubly hard, right? Like, I know for me, it was more difficult to draw the line between work life and home life, you know, because they were just perpetually blurred, right?
Part of it is like you're looking for fun stimulation, you know?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to read the news.
Yeah.
You know, that's not entertaining.
Depressing. Yeah.
And then you can't keep entertaining yourself with Netflix because your eyes are just watering.
Yeah.
It's like you task. I think humans also are very task oriented. You know, like people want to do stuff.
Yeah.
And so if work is particularly your outlet to do stuff, then it's kind of fun until
keep doing it.
Yeah, to keep doing it
Yeah.
until you realize that you're doing it a little too much or whatever.
Yeah.
But now that people have more lifestyle choices, post pandemic, yeah, it's interesting because there is this legacy culture now of like, you know, possibly leading to burnout or people being overworked, and now forcing themselves into a cultural paradigm that might be not the healthiest for themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
Maintain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, back to this thing of vacation. Mm-hmm. What did you want to add?
Yeah, just picking into that. I mean, it's interesting because I have been in startup for a while, and you know, the unlimited vacation, I think, you know, what we've really found, like especially on the HR and people side, it's like there's either people who use it all the time or people who never use it. And it creates this discordance among teams, you know, because it's kind of like the person that you need to do something might not be there, but they can have unlimited vacation. And then there's the people who haven't taken vacation in 3 years, right?
Right.
So it's really, really tough, you know, to kind of find the middle ground. So that's been like an interesting one, because we sort of, you know, put a cap on it and said like, we're going to do 3 weeks of vacation for everybody, and then we're going to do like a 1 week shutdown for the entire company, so that everybody just slows down. And that's sort of like brought it back to table stakes of like kind of the 4 weeks, which I think is pretty normal in the market. But the company shutdown is, it's nice. Honestly.
Yeah, we do that between like Christmas and New Year's, you know.
Yeah.
And this year it's a full week in between those weekends.
I know. How it falls, it's brilliant, right? Yeah.
No, and that's whether it's then or another season. I think having that forced break from work is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Obviously doing it at a time when the market's slow is helpful.
Yeah. Kind of helps. Just a little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, so then tell me a little bit about this kind of, as it's part of your role, but how do you deal with remote work in terms of like trying to get everyone on board and on the same page? Are you deploying any particular tools? Is it a software issue, or is it more like a curatorial thing where you're getting people, despite time zones, on a call or otherwise? Traveling to a city for an offsite. How do you stitch the country of Canada that is so big together?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's just ongoing learnings, right? And I think what works at one point in time won't work 3 weeks later, right? And it doesn't work for some people. One of the ones that's really challenging is like the welcome lunches that we do, and we do them remotely so that everybody's like an equal citizen. But invariably for the people in Vancouver, it's like it's breakfast time for them, you know, and maybe they don't want breakfast, you know. So we've had to play with a couple different things, whether it's like tooling or just, you know, time of day when we do things. Like you just constantly have to kind of play with things a little bit more, because it's just there's no one solution, right? It's just it's tough, and people's needs change all the time as well. So it's that's a tough one, really.
I've been hearing cool stories of like teams kind of inverting it. So it's like giving reporting assignments to their team members to come back and share. So I think this is a really cool technique. You know, it goes back to school, right? Like show and tell.
Yeah.
Show and tell is a really cool thing because depending on how you use it,
It is.
you're really drawing passions out of people.
Yeah.
And like, what are you interested in?
Yeah.
What happened to you? Let's not keep it on Mondays for the weekend because as you get older, you don't do as much interesting stuff on the weekend. But yeah.
Or maybe you do, right?
Maybe you do.
Maybe making soup and napping is interesting, right?
I took a nap. No, I'm not done. Let me tell you about my dream in the nap. Yeah, exactly. People could dig into it. But yeah, no, I was just talking to someone about the assignment side of it, where, you know, they're kind of looking at content and marketing, and every person at an organization as a potential source of content for marketing to try and more accurately market their brand, you know, and empower all of the employees at the company to feel like they can speak on behalf of the company,
Right.
by sharing their voice through publication.
Okay.
Which I think is a really interesting one, especially for remote teams, because if a company is across Canada and its labor force is across Canada, then hopefully they could speak better to the burgeoning market that they're trying to grow into.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just one of the tips, but
That's interesting. Maybe there's something in that.
yeah.
Taking notes.
So any things that are coming up for your team for next year on this tip? Like you mentioned, you know, some activities you planned for the summer.
Yeah.
Is it a summer thing, or are you going to do some cool stuff in different seasons next year?
Yeah, well, we do this is our second annual winter party coming up in a couple weeks. And that's, you know, deliberately geared towards people who are completely remote so that we can fly them in, they can experience the office. We do all our parties in the office so that people can feel like the office is home, even if they don't get to work there all the time. But yeah, we've done like a winter party, a summer party. We had a surprise guest come for the summer party, which was a drag queen. We have a very nose in books culture, so this was like really fun to sort of shake it up, and nobody knew that the drag queen was coming, so it was fantastic. Tons of fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to hearing more stories
Indeed.
from the relay adventure as you guys continue to grow.
Yeah.
And especially this cross-Canada thing, because we don't talk about it enough as Canadian companies, that like our country is so big.
Oh, it's huge.
And as Torontonians,
Yeah.
we're a little insular. We're complaining about
we're the center of the world, right?
Jesus, all we talk about is like, you know, how difficult the roads, the traffic, it's so, you know.
Yeah.
But that's because we never like fly to Manitoulin Island for a meeting.
No, not easy to get there. But yeah, no, it's a rich market. I mean, there's so many different pockets, and different tech communities as well that are coming up all the time. Halifax, Victoria, it's great, right?
Yeah,
Wide opportunity for hiring.
for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining me on the mic.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.